This gadget right here is how we made butter many years ago. When my sister and I were kids, we'd milk the cows, let the cream rise to the top, pour it in here, and you have the two little things here. As you go up and down, it agitates the milk and makes the fat stick together, which becomes butter. The leftover of that is buttermilk. So I ran out of butter for things that I'm going to cook today, so I have heavy cream, and I'm going to take this cream and show you how to make butter. Stick with me. We're going to do it a cheat way, not the old-fashioned way that we grew up doing. All right, so this is the cheating way of making butter. Instead of using a butter churn, use a blender, use a mixer. And this mixer definitely needs some sort of top on it, because as the butter starts to collect together, it will lump together and start to splash the buttermilk that's left over. It'll splash everywhere. So let's get started. So heavy whipping cream, any type of heavy whipping cream, no half and half, but heavy whipping cream is thick. And we're gonna pour this right in here. And we are going to add salt. Add salt to your specific taste. When you're eating beef fat, there's nothing more healthy than adding a bunch of salt to it. So I heavily salt it. The cream is already sweet. The salt brings out that sweetness. And we are going to turn this on, and it's going to run it. This will probably, at this amount, will probably take about 10 minutes, maybe longer. But I'm going to go ahead and do this off camera, spare you the time, come back when it's done. Right now, it's at about a whipped cream stage. So it's starting to get even thicker whipped cream, and it's going to start to coagulate into actual butter. When you first start this, start it out a little bit low, because it's going to splash everywhere, and you can speed it up as it gets to a whipped cream. But as it starts to form into butter, you're going to need to slow it down, or else the buttermilk will start to fly everywhere. Also, as it thickens, it's very thick now, you're going to need to stop. You're going to need to push down those that is stuck to the sides. Get it down in there so that it's not stuck to the side and it gets mixed into the butter. Right now it's at a whipped butter stage. If you've ever gone to a restaurant and you've had the whipped butter that is easy to spread on bread, it's at that stage right now. Pretty good. So you can whip your butter, or you can make it solid like the butter you're used to getting in the store. Now I have poured off the milk that was left over, and that's actually buttermilk. I will save that for later on this week when I make some bread. But right now, I'm still letting the butter go, because it's going to squeeze out more of that milk, and it's going to leave just the fat that's left over, or the butter that's left over. So the more milk you get out, the thicker and the more solid the butter is going to be. And then you just pour that extra milk off and make something else with it, or you can pour it away. So this next part is a little bit messy. It's normally done with wooden paddles. I don't have wooden paddles, so I'm going to use my hands. Make sure your hands are nice and clean. This is how I normally do it at home. I actually have butter containers. I'll fill these up, freeze the extra, and then I will make a little ball out of the rest to use for cooking until I get to this portion. So what you want to do is get the actual butter out, and you want to take that butter, get as much of it as you can get out, and you want to take that butter and you want to give it an ice bath. I am not using ice, and reason being is the ice makes it thicker and not as pliable. So I don't use ice, so that way I can put it in here and mold it better. But really what you would do with paddles, if you have 2 wooden paddles, and you would continue to smash it like so, and you'd keep putting it into the cold water. And what you're doing is getting out all of the leftover milk that is still in the butter. You're gonna fold it over, and those paddles, you would continue to do it like this with the paddles over and over. The paddles have little grooves in it to make it stick to the paddle, and you would keep going back and forth and keep folding it and folding it, putting it in the water, and then fold it more. The wooden paddles are not exactly easier, but they're less messy. And when you do this normally with ice cold water, or water with a lot of ice in it, saves your hands from freezing, because it is actually really cold when you do this for a while. Okay, once you get all of that extra out, you're gonna go ahead and stuff your butter containers. This is why I like to leave it pliable instead of using the ice, because I can feel every nook and cranny of the containers. Normally, I will do this with an entire bottle of cream. I only had half a bottle of cream because I cook a lot with cream, and I'm only making this because I need about 1 tablespoon of butter for the chicken marsala I plan on cooking later on today. So went through all this just for 1 tablespoon of butter. Okay, this, I'm going to smooth that off. Go into the next one. Looks like I'm only going to make 2 out of this. All right, smooth it in. Clean it up a little bit. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. You have butter. And you can make this as pretty as you want or not. You don't have to add salt to it. I mean, for those of you trying to be healthy with your beef fat that you're going to be eating, don't add salt. I'm going to put this in the refrigerator for about 20 minutes. I'm going to pop one of these out so I can use it. Take the other one, put it in an air sealer, pull all the air out, and put it in the freezer. Save it for my next meal. As I mentioned while making the butter, I wanted to make a chicken marsala for dinner. So we're going to use very simple recipes. We're going to use chicken thighs instead of chicken breasts, which will probably drive chefs insane to see me do, because I rather have chicken thighs than chicken breasts. Garlic, salt, pepper, mushrooms, and a port wine, or excuse me, a Marsala wine. Sweet, a little bit sweet like a port. Most people prefer a dry Marsala. I like the dry and the sweet, but I generally make my own wine, and I don't have a bottle that's quite ready yet. But when I do make my own wine, Marsala is just a fortified wine, meaning that it has brandy added to it. So I just add brandy or one of my favorite whiskeys, which I tend to have a lot of, to my wine and use that instead. So today I'm using a Taylor's wine, which is one of the cheaper ones for cooking. And of course I have a glass to drink while I'm cooking. And what we're going to do is we're going to chop the mushrooms, and then we're going to salt and pepper the chicken. So here we go. Okay, now that we have our mushrooms sliced, our chicken seasoned on both sides, salt and pepper, garlic has been chopped up and minced, and wine has been partially drank, we can move on to the next step. There is no reason to have this many mushrooms other than I like this many mushrooms. If you don't want that many, cut the amount in half. However you want to do it, that's what cooking's all about, is cooking it to your taste. I personally like it this way. I don't like chicken breasts, so I use chicken thighs. Most people flatten out their chicken thighs. These are very close to the same thickness, so I'm not going to flatten them out either. I'm going to leave them just as they are. I also am going to add a little bit of flour to lightly dust these guys. And the reason I'm going to do that is I am going to add a little bit of cream later, and when I add that cream, it's going to thicken up, but this is going to help it to thicken even more, and it is going to leave even more fond in the pan. Fond is that stuff that sticks to the bottom of the pan that tastes so good. It's going to leave more of that into the pan as I cook my mushrooms later. Now, this step is optional, I believe. It's been a long time since I cooked this with a recipe. As most things, I don't use a recipe. I cook something once, change the recipe to whatever I want it to be, and I continue to cook it that way or add and take away as I go along. So this is not necessary. I've seen plenty of people, and I believe the first time I did this, maybe, there was no flour added. But when in Rome, I'm not in Rome, so I'm doing what I want to do. Now, I like a lot of sauce, and I like it nice and creamy and very thick. So we are going to see just how I get that way. The other two ingredients you're going to need is chicken broth, roughly a cup. I never measure it, but roughly a cup of chicken broth. Later on, I will show how I make my own chicken broth and I freeze it. And you also need heavy whipping cream and that 1 tablespoon of butter that I needed at the very beginning of this when I made all of that butter. So follow along. You're going to see how this all comes together. So if you remember that video that I made earlier for the butter, this is where it comes in. So we're going to start this skillet with a bit of olive oil, and on medium high, and we're going to add about a tablespoon of butter. That was the butter's only purpose. The olive oil along with the butter gives it that buttery flavor, and the olive oil keeps it from burning. Plus, I'm a fan of the olive oil flavor. So we're gonna get that nice and melted over a medium-high heat. And this is just something I do. I like to make sure the entire thing gets very well coated. Just one of my pet peeves. So now we're going to add in our chicken. I like to start with the presentation side down. Get it a nice crispy brown looking color. Not necessarily crispy, but the way it looks like it will be crispy once it's done. We don't want to crowd the pan, as that does you no favors. And as you're going along, this is going to drop off a lot of oil, render the fat out of there. It's not much fat on here because it is skinless chicken thighs, but there is going to be extra once you're finished here. So we're going to let this cook, and we're going to take time to finish our glass of wine. That makes all the cooking better. Now that you have your chicken nice and brown, kind of a little bit crispy on the outside, that's the way I like it. Not the way recipes normally go for this, but I like it a little crispy on the outside. Once you've got that going, now we're going to go with the mushrooms. As I said, I like more mushrooms than the average individual. And one escaped the pan, lucky guy. What we're going to do is scrape the bottom of this pan to get a lot of the fond up, as well as stir these mushrooms in. Now, I added enough oil that I don't need extra. But we're going to cook these mushrooms for, give or take, 5 to 6 minutes until they've got that nice caramelized look on them. There we go. Got them nice and coated with the oil. And we're going to let them sit here for a little bit, get a little caramelized. And once they're caramelized, I'm going to come back to you and show you where we're going next. All right, now that your now that your mushrooms are looking nice and caramelized, you want to add a little garlic. Now, your garlic, be careful, stir it pretty quick for about 30 seconds. You want it to be nice and fragrant. You don't want to let it burn, or else it'll give you kind of a bitter taste. So you want to stir it a lot and often. Once it gives off that nice, beautiful garlic aroma, then you're going to go ahead and add in your masala. No measuring cup for me. I am just a home cook, so there's no such thing as a measuring cup for me. I'm going to turn this up to back from medium to a medium high, and I'm going to scrape all that fond off the bottom of this. That gives it that delicious umami flavor. Now once I get this back up to a boil, I'm going to add my chicken stock. Now a lot of you are wondering, this is filled to the grill, why am I not cooking wild game right now? Well, I'm out of wild game. It's summertime. There's no hunting going on. But I have made this recipe with quail breast and dove breast. Works just as great. In my opinion, it's even better. Being that I am completely out of wild game, everyone keeps asking me to go ahead and film things that I cook on a daily basis. So you guys are getting the film. Now I'm gonna let this cook down just a little bit, and then I'm gonna add my cream to it. I'm actually gonna add a little bit more Marsala to it, just because. And also because, well, it's Marsala. Cheers. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and add my cream to it. Once again, measuring is not something I do very well. But this cream is going to allow it to thicken up as you let it boil down or cook down. Like I said before, I also like for mine to be very thick. So we're going to give this a little bit to cook down. And then we'll add our chicken. Okay, now that our sauce has thickened up, it's cooked down, it's thick, it's about to where it covers the spoon. This is where we're going to add our chicken back. And your chicken's been sitting out of the sauce for a while. So basically all you're doing is just letting the chicken warm back up. Once it warms back up, so you're gonna put a little bit of this sauce over it. Once it is warm again, we're going to put this on a plate. Those mushrooms are smelling so good. Mushrooms with that garlic. And I'll be right back when we plate this up. Oh wait, don't forget a little parsley. Sprinkle a little parsley over that. All right, then we'll come back to this when we're ready to plate it up. So this is our finished product. We're going to take this and we're going to put this on a plate and we're going to work it out. Okay, boys and girls, this is where the happiness comes in. We are going to put this on a plate, and I originally had some roasted garlic Parmesan potatoes in the oven, and I forgot to turn the oven on. So we are going with chicken Marsala. That's the wine talking. We're going with chicken Marsala only today. Gonna hit this with a little bit of parsley. And enjoy.